Jeremy Clarkson, Richard Hammond, and James May. Over the many years, these apocalyptic Over the many years, these apocalyptic I can't even say it. Over the many years, these apocalyptic dingleberries have earned a special place in our hearts. And while we may have initially come for the cars, we stayed for the chemistry and banter.
Follow.
However, a question I've thought for a while is, which host was the smartest with their picks? Now I'm going to be getting into the lab and talking about the specials. If you want to see me go through the challenges, let me know and I'll do a separate video for that. Otherwise, I'll be here for hours. And also in regards for Top Gear, I'll be taking the specials up to the Patagonia Special because let's be real, that's all we care about. Additional context, I'll only be talking about the specials where they each brought their own car, so specials like the Polar and Madagascar are not going to be included. Even though I love those, not going to be talking about them. While I'm going to keep it factual if there is a clear winner, there will be moments where a winner is not clear, and this is where my bias will come into play. I'll do my best to answer the question which car would I personally take either for fun or reliability or both. If you have disagreements, let me know, but I'm sure everyone is going to agree with my picks. For each special, I will rank who picked the best, second and third best car, and we'll see by the end who came out on top by averaging these scores. So with all that context out of the way, let's get on to the very first special, which was the 2007 USA Special. Jeremy brought the Chevrolet Camaro RS, Hammond brought the Dodge Ram, and James brought the Cadillac Sedan. Now for me, the third place for this one is pretty easy, particularly for one quote.
Oi, jump leads.
Sorry James, that is putting you into third place for this special. Now, in regards for who got first and second, from the top of my head, I don't believe there was anything particularly wrong. Well, I say that very loosely. I can't remember if Jeremy's car? I can't remember if Jeremy's car broke down or not. I think it was, for the most part, it at least went, so it would get you from A to B. But I think in terms of reliability, especially if we're going through the Bible Belt, I'm going to have to put Richard in first for this one, which puts Jeremy in second. I think that's pretty fair. We now move on to the 2007 Botswana Special. Jeremy brought the Lancia Beta Coupe, Hammond brought the Opel Kadett, aka Oliver, and James brought the Mercedes-Benz 230E. Now, I think third place for this one is pretty obvious as well. Sorry, Jeremy. As much as you liked the Lancia, it was pretty rough out there. I think first place for this one is also pretty obvious, even though they made that joke at the end with the Beetle. I think Hammond does have to get first place for this special. As much as I respect the Mercedes, because it did work the entire time. As they said, the entire body had to be taken off. So first place for this has to go to Hammond and second has to go to May. We now move on to the 2008 Vietnam Special, the motorbike one of my all-time favorite specials. I'm pretty sure everyone watching this is already a Top Gear or Grand Tour fan, but if you're not, this is a must-watch special. This one's also going to be kind of hard for me to rate because I know at the end we had that race to the bar where they all converted their bike. Oh, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. Where they all had to convert their bikes into those boat things. I'm not really going to include that. I'm just going to include them being motorbikes for the portion. Also a scooter, because Jeremy bought a scooter. Now, third place, I think, has to go to Jeremy. As much as I think the scooter looks pretty cool, it did have a lot of issues early on, and I do remember that, I think for the electricals, they had like a bag of grass, or like lawn clippings or something that was making it not short circuit. So it had a few issues early on. Also, off the top of my head, sorry, I didn't even say what each person brought. So Jeremy had the Piaggio Vespa, Richard had the Minsk, and May had the Honda Super Cub. As I've already discussed, Jeremy, he had the scooter, third place. It did have a few issues. I believe one of the wheels was really wobbly, which is pretty dangerous. So yeah, sorry Jeremy, you're in third for this one. As to who came first and who came second, off the top of my head, I know that Richard he changed a couple things early on. This is really hard for me to rate because one comes down to a bike that I think didn't have anything wrong with it apart from running out of petrol, um, which is James's, and the other one, which had some power. I think for me, I would have to go the Minsk. That has to go in first. I remember seeing James ride up the hills and just having absolutely no power. That would be a pain. I might regret that decision, but I think first has to go to Hammond, second has to go to May, and third has to go to Jeremy for the Vietnam Special. We now move on to the 2009 Bolivia Special. Jeremy brought the Range Rover, Hammond brought the Land Cruiser, and May brought the Jimny. This one is very easy to rate. Now, keep in mind, as I said at the start, I'm choosing between which car I would pick out of these three, not the car itself on a grand scale, right? Because obviously Land Cruisers are known for being super reliable, and Range Rovers, I've seen in person, have not been the most reliable, but I'm picking out of these three cars. So first place, very easy, Jeremy with his Range Rover. Very surprising. The most reliable car in the world is the most, sorry, other way around. The most unreliable car in the world is the most reliable car in the world. Great quote. Quote? Quote. On that, the third place for this one is also very easy. The Land Cruiser, sorry, Hammond. The most reliable car in the world is the most unreliable car in the world. And thus, by power of deduction, the second place is pretty easy, which goes to May. I did like the Suzuki, and if it had all four wheels from the start, maybe it would have gone a little bit better, but at least we found out that the car floats. Moving on to the 2010 Middle East Special. Jeremy brought the Mazda MX-5, Hammond brought the Fiat Barchetta, and May brought the BMW Z3. Now, interestingly, this was a special where Jeremy played it safe and picked a car that was going to work from start to finish. But they all picked a winner at the end, and I agree. So the winner was Richard with his Fiat Barchetta. Really cool looking car. As Jeremy said about his MX-5, great car, but he hadn't bonded with it, which I agree. The third place was pretty easy. May with his BMW. I don't think it did have a few mechanical issues off the top of my head. I can't really remember if it did, but I know that he said the gearbox was horrible. There's a special place in hell for whoever made that gearbox, which means second place goes to the Mazda, which I think is, for Mr. Clarkson, which works in Mazda MX-5. Looks alright, will work, nothing really special about it. The 2011 India Special. I gotta say, I do agree with the majority about this special. Can't say I'm a big fan. There wasn't really anything particularly wrong with it. I just don't think it had the spark of the other specials, but we're here, so we're going to rate it. So Jeremy brought the Jaguar XJS, Hammond brought the classic Rover Mini, and James brought the Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow. Now, I don't think they had really picked a winner for this one, but to me, I think Hammond wins this one, the Rover Mini. That is a cool car. As you said, great for the area in the big cities. It's small and zippy, nothing to really stress about. But for the other two, Jeremy's Jag and May's Rolls-Royce, I do like Jags. And I don't think anything really went wrong on this special, but I am going to go the Rolls-Royce in second, just because it is cool, like the Jag, but it had air conditioning, I think being in India at that time of year, air conditioning, that's an easy second place, which puts Jeremy in third. We now move on to the 2013 Africa Special. An all-time favorite of mine. I've watched this special probably the most out of any other special. I loved it. I love the idea of converting a car into like a mobile camper van tent thing, I thought that was really cool. Irrespective of what they said at the end of every car's the winner, I think anyone watching, I would be surprised if you disagree with this opinion. I think Richard won this one easily, the WRX. Yes, we did see clips of it also getting bogged in muddy areas, but if you pick any of the other two over that one for that particular trip, I think you've kind of lost your mind. I think third place was pretty easy as well. I think James, the Volvo, as much as I loved how the Volvo looks, Not the right car for that journey, which again puts Jeremy in second. Feel free to disagree with me on that one in the comments. I'd be surprised if you do. Which now brings us on to the Burma Special. The one where they all drove trucks. Well, 2 trucks and a van. Jeremy had the Isuzu TX dump truck. Hammond had the Isuzu TX farm truck. And James had the Hino FB110, I believe it was. I think third place for this one is pretty easy as well, James. Even he hated that van by the end of it. It had nothing but problems on that entire journey. As he said, I think, what did he say? It's a crane attached to a dog egg or something like that. So, third place. As for first and second, I think I have to put Jeremy's in first. Purely because at least he had a proper seat to sit in. Could you imagine doing that entire journey on what Hammond called a church pew? You know? So I think Richard's in second and Jeremy's in first. Which now brings us on to the last Top Gear special that we all care about. The 2014 Patagonia Special. Jeremy brought the Porsche 928 GT, Hammond brought the Ford Mustang Mach 1, and James brought the Lotus Esprit V8. As many of the other specials, I think first and third in this one is pretty obvious. Third going to Hammond's Mustang. That thing was kind of a piece of trash across the journey. Caused him nothing but problems. First has to go to the Lotus. That car looks really cool, and even though Lotus stands for lots of trouble, usually serious, it handled the journey it did handle the journey the best out of all of them. The Porsche ended up having electrical issues on that road. But, yep, default second for Jeremy, first to James, third to Hammond. Alright, that means we can smoothly move over to the Grand Tour specials, which brings us to the 2016 Namibia Special, the beach buggy one. Jeremy had the customized VW Beetle buggy. Wait, why am I even explaining it? They all had customizable VW buggies. Jeremy had the V8 one, Richard had the off-road one, and James had the traditional one. This one I can see people disagreeing with me on. I don't know the most about beach buggies, so I'm going to assess it purely on that journey that they had. Third, I know, and disagree with me on this one all you will, but third goes to Jeremy. As cool as it would be to have a V8 in a beach buggy that does wheelies, the coolant system was constantly overheating and didn't customize the battery, so I think it was draining itself. So Jeremy, you're in third. This is where I think people might disagree with me. James had the most traditional one, but for that journey, sorry, but I gotta go Richard Hammond's. Again, that whole argument they had at the end of his isn't a true traditional beach buggy. Well, actually, hang on. They did say that his was more a beach buggy than Jeremy's because he had the classic engine. First place has to go to Hammond and second place has to go to James for this one. Purely from the bumpy roads, it looked like they were not having fun without suspension. We now move on to the 2018 Mozambique Special. I think it was called Saving the World. Now, so we're going to assess the cars based on them delivering fish. An all-time classic meme moment out of this episode. In saying that, May is in third for this one. What was it? He has to wait for 5.5 minutes for it to cool down or something like that each time. So, was it... Have to wait for 5.5... So it was something really abstract, like a weird number, but he's in third. It was getting bogged and constantly overheating, and yeah. Which brings me on to the other two. If I was on a mission to deliver fish, yeah, I would have to go Jeremy's. The Nissan hardbody, 4-wheel drive, has a tray in the back. Even though he had, what was it, coal cooked fish or something, I think it just would have been a better option than the motorbike. I know the motorbike could have gone on the outsides, but as we saw, Richard did fall over a fair bit. So first, Nissan Hardbody for Jeremy. Second, Richard with his TVS Star motorbike. And third, May with his Mercedes-Benz 200T. Now we have the 2019 Colombia Special. This was a really good special. I really enjoyed it. Jeremy had the Jeep Wrangler. Richard had the Chevrolet Silverado monster truck. And, May had the Fiat Panda 4x4. Now, the third place for this one, I think, is pretty easy. That has to go to Hammond, straight up. The Chevrolet Silverado monster truck, it had a bunch of problems. I don't know if they were caused because it was just living in the ocean for a while, but as they had the race between that and the Fiat Panda on the freeway, in the words of James May, that truck must be utter garbage. Now, for as who came first, for that journey, honestly, I gotta give it to James. I really like that Fiat Panda. I know people are not going to like this choice. Like, the Jeep obviously did everything. But the Fiat Panda it did everything as well. And it's just a cool car. I think it's much cooler than the Jeep Wrangler. And I think it would have been more comfortable as well. So first, James, Fiat Panda. Second, Jeremy with the Jeep Wrangler. And third, Richard with the Chevrolet Silverado monster truck. Now we have the 2019 Seamen Special Southeast Asia. A all-time best, if not the best special they've ever done. There's something about putting these three guys on a vehicle that isn't a car. So the Vietnam special, this special, I can't remember other ones, but this is a great special. In saying that, I do not know much about boats, so I'm going to assess it just based on how they went in this episode. So, this is actually really hard. I think third, I would have to go James. Just because, again, it's weak on power. And two, that journey at the very end across the ocean would have been a nightmare in that boat. I think it's so small and so weak. It just would have been hell. But for who came in second? So we got the PBR, which cannot handle low speeds, but work the entire time. And we have the Scarab, which had mechanical issues, but was good in most of the situations. I'm not too sure because, again, the PBR was leaps and bounds more than the Scarab. But that's not the question. I'm just asking myself, who picked the best vehicle for the journey? This one's really hard. I think I would have to go first PBR. I think if the Scarab didn't have any mechanical issues, I would probably go that one. But it did. And the PBR was able to handle the low lake at the start. Yeah, it couldn't travel through the lattice things, but just fork out a little bit of money, get someone to tow you across. And it handled the ocean just as well as the Scarab. So first, Jeremy with the PBR. Second, Hammond with the Scarab, and third, James with the wooden cruiser. We now move on to the 2020 Madagascar Special, a massive hunt. I thought this special was fine. It was better than I remembered. I think going from Seamen to this special really dampened this special when it first came out. I think a lot of people didn't, I didn't like it as much, but when I revisited it, the only thing I really didn't like from it was this whole we gotta find treasure kind of set up, scripted kind of portion of it. I don't think they needed that. They could have just said, we're going to just travel the hardest road in Madagascar. And that would have made it better, in my opinion. Up for other people. I didn't like the whole reading the map and that whole script because it was obviously just very scripted. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about who picked the best vehicle for the journey. In third place, after the modifications, was Richard Hammond's Ford Focus RS. I honestly, with being the smooth brain that I am, I did see, when I first saw his car, I thought, it's going to be awesome. This is going to tackle anything. But then when you really think about it, it's like these wheels. There's so many little things that can just go wrong on it. It's not just a wheel. There's multiple wheels and treads. So it was not good at all. So third place, Richard Hammond. As much as I respect the Caterham on how much it did, and yes, it was a track day car, which May brought, I'm sorry, but the Bentley was just in another league. You could get in that car, it did everything the Caterham did, but you were clean, comfortable during. You weren't covered with turds the whole time. So first, Jeremy with his Bentley. Second, James with his Caterham. And third, Richard with his Ford Focus. We now move on to the 2021 Scotland Special, Lochdown, with the older style cars. So Jeremy had the Lincoln Continental Mark V. Richard had the Cadillac Coupe de Ville. And May had the Buick Riviera. Batali? I don't know how to pronounce the last bit. I don't know much about these particular cars. Given face value, I would probably like to own Richard's. Looks cool and had the most power. But if we're going to go based on the special itself, Jeremy's was the one to make it to the end without any issues. I don't think I had any issues during, but at least after they got off that massive bridge that they made, his kept going. So first has to go to Jeremy. Both Richard and James broke down at the very end. I cannot remember whose car had more issues. I think it might have been Richard's, but I'm not sure. But in saying that, I do like Richard's car more than James, so I would go that one. Here's the bias coming out. So second place to Richard with his Cadillac Coupe, and third place to James May and his Buick. Okay, now we have the 2022 Scandinavian Special, a Scandi flick. I think this special was originally meant to be filmed in Russia. One of the specials was, and I think it might have been this one, but this one got moved due to COVID, I'm pretty sure. Jeremy brought the Audi RS4, Richard brought the Subaru Impreza WRX STIV Limited, 5 Limited, and May brought the Mitsubishi Evo. This one's also kind of hard for me to rate because I don't know the most about these cars. Based on the style of cars that they brought, I can't remember the word I'm looking for, but Jeremy's didn't fit the bill. So I'm going to put him in third place for this one. Which brings me down to who came first between Richard and James. Now, both of these cars have a pretty big following behind them. Both are very good cars in themselves, the Subaru Impreza and the Mitsubishi Evo. I don't think you could go wrong with either one, and I'm not going to rate this one based on the damage that James did, but rather how it was at the start, because I think that's only fair. I think I have to go... So this is going to be a personal pick, because both are they're like apples and oranges, right? I personally like the Evo more, so I'm going to go James in first, Richard in second, Jeremy in third for this one. Now we have the 2023 Eastern European Special Eurocrash. I really like this special. I thought it was very, very, very good, especially the wax museum scene. That was great. Who brought the best car for this journey? So Jeremy had the Mitsuka Lee Sai, I can't even pronounce that. They're all on screen. Richard brought the Chevrolet SSR, and James brought the Crosley CC convertible. So anyone who's seen this special, argue with me if you would bring the Crosley. I wouldn't. That would be in third. As interesting as it was, he missed everything, and it was terrible on freeways. It can stay in third. Maybe it can be like a little city transporter, but it's not meant for long journeys. Now, who got in first? I think first has to go to Jeremy for this one. I know at the end the Chev had a few mechanical issues. They were both pretty reliable overall. But yeah, just because the Chev had a few issues at the end, Jeremy has to get first for this one. So Jeremy first, Richard second, James in third. Now we have the 2024 Sahara Special Sand Job. Jeremy brought the Jaguar F-Type, Richard brought the Aston Martin DB9, and James May brought the Maserati Grand Cabrio. I think first place for this one is Jeremy. Now, I will say I'm absolutely biased towards F-Types. I love F-Types. I love how they sound, how they look, and as much as people like to say they're unreliable, look what it did. It did that whole journey and didn't have a single... I don't think it had a single hiccup. Yeah, Jeremy easily got a first for this one. I love that F-Type so much. In third place, this is pretty easy, goes to Richard. That Aston Martin had nothing but problems. It had like a mind of its own at the end, which means a default second place has to go to James May with the Maserati. Also really nice. You can argue that car looks the best out of all of them, but for that journey, there's no way I would pick anything but that F-Type. So that is going to be the last special I rate. We do have the 2024 Zimbabwe Special one for the road, but I don't think it's particularly fair to rank these cars on who brought the best. It's not really a challenge, but it's more of a show send-off, so I will not be ranking the cars in the 2024 Zimbabwe Special. But now that we've got all the specials out of the way, we can go through and rank them. Now, I worked a bit ahead and I put them in an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to average out the scores. It is super close between first and second. So with an average placing of 2.27 repeater is James May. He did have a couple wins with the Patagonia. That was the Lotus, Colombia. I did like his Fiat Panda and the Scandinavian Special. That's just because I like the Evo. But he also had a pretty decent streak of third places. Which brings us on to second place. So first place had a score of 1.833 repeater, and second place had a score of 1.8 repeater. So in second place was Richard Hammond. He started off very strong. He came first, third, first, but then it just trailed off after that. I think going into the Grand Tour might have stifled his choice picking. But we had an opposite kind of result for Jeremy Clarkson. So started off a bit rough, second, third, first, second, third. But then when he got into the Grand Tour, he was getting a lot of firsts. So there we go. The smartest Top Gear host was the orangutan, Jeremy Clarkson. And the person who did it properly did not do it properly. Okay, that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, let me know. And if you want to see the challenges, I can go through and rank each challenge. That would be pretty fun. There's going to be a lot of them, but I'm happy to do it. And if you have disagreements, let me know as well. So anyway, have a good day and see you soon.